Hi there, I am Corey Williams, and we're starting a brand new series where we do interviews with people from our church. We're calling it Ordinary Ambassadors. At our church, we talk a lot about doing life on mission. And so the hope with these interviews is that we would be able to kind of put some very practical applications together of what it looks like at the street level to do this. And so today I'm joined by my friend Ruth Johnson, and I'm going to welcome her aboard. Welcome, Ruth.
Hey.
Um, hey, first off, give us a little bit of context. So, we talk about doing life on mission, and I'm going to ask you a lot of specific questions about your work and what you're doing there and how you're seeing God at work there. So tell me about your work. Where is it that you work at, and, what's that look like right now?
Yeah. Well, I work at a hospital lab. So the healthcare industry, obviously, right now is real interesting. I mean, I think all professions probably have their stories of being interesting. We're obviously busy and staffing and things like that are, crazy. But I've been there for, I want to say 17 years, which to me seems weird to say that. But, it's the place that God's put me, I know for sure. And just am seeing his, yep, this is it. This is the spot. Just faithfully doing the deal, And so, so, I mean, real practical, if you got your blood drawn, I would be the person who would get the tubes and run the tests and send the numbers to your doctor and all that stuff.
Gotcha. Are you guys doing any COVID testing at your site?
We are doing some. We are doing we have a rapid test that we do, but it's real selective. There's only 2 people in the health system that can actually order it. So it's got to be they're just keeping track of numbers and, supplies and things that are available and all those big decisions. So I'm just one of the people doing the grunt work sometimes, which I'm okay with, to be completely honest. I'm fine not making the big choices.
You've talked about how busy it is right now. What are some of the factors for that? Is it simply because there's a lack of staffing, or people are quarantined, or what's kind of the issue?
Yeah, kind of all of those things, which I'm sure lots of people are dealing with. Like, work, it's interesting when someone can't come to work for 10 to 14 days or whatever, and earlier this year who left. And so how do you replace them? And then when you do, you're training people. And so welcome to the chaos. Let me train you. How do you train someone in the middle of chaos? Which it's working, but it just makes life interesting.
You're a personality, right? You're the kind of person who likes to kind of have a good game plan and know what to expect. And it's not like that right now, correct?
Yeah. I feel like in a lot of ways, a lot of people can go into work and it might be a little different every day, but you kind of overall know what to expect. And I feel like these days that's not the case. Some of what to expect, but you don't know if all of a sudden there's 3 people who called in sick and there's no one to help cover. So we got to get creative with how we do staffing, or, hey, we're going live with this test. So you've been trained, ready, set. And it's okay, quick, let's review. let's talk it through. And it's just, and then of course, just personalities and how the people that you work with are real people, and they all have emotions about things happening in the world, as you do. And so, all of that stuff plays into just being able to work as a team and do the job. I mean, it's a great place to work. And I'm so grateful to have a job that I can pick up hours if I want to. So in that way, I'm, feel grateful, and I know that God's provided for me, and I'm just thanking him for that. But also it's this challenge of, we got to keep going. we got to keep doing the deal and figuring out how to do it well, I guess.
Yeah, it's been really cool over the years to kind of track with you and listen to kind of the relationships that you've built at work. Now, you talked a minute ago about feeling called there, that this God wants you. Do you
Yeah.
have any insight into just having a confidence about that?
Um, I think it wasn't like when I took the job that I felt like, oh, this is it. It was more like, okay, I'm, going to be a responsible adult and get a job and do, whatever. Um, but as time has passed, and I was just talking to someone the other day about understanding the idea of faithfulness and then actually seeing what happens when you're faithful. Now, faithfully going to work to me seems kind of like a no-brainer. I'm growing up. That's kind of a standard, like you get a job and you work, But then the idea of staying at a place and being just who you are and doing life. I mean, part of me feels like, yeah, but that's what everybody does. And at the same time, there's been times where I've been like, oh my, this is hard, and I don't want to do this, and there's got to be something easier, Um, but God's been showing me, especially lately, I just feel like in volumes, what faithfully showing up and being, who I am at work, what he's done with it, because if it was up to me, there's a lot of things that would have happened. There's a lot of things that I feel like he laid in my lap, and I'm just like, oh, okay, here we go. So yeah, that's been interesting, and I think it's confirmed to me because, I mean, quite a few years back, it feels like now I was like, I'll move to Haiti. I'll go live there for a while or whatever, I'm cool with that. I don't want to, buy a house or anything. Cause what if God asked me to up and move, I don't want to stick around here. I don't want to set my roots down here too much. And then God told me we're going to buy a house and we're going to stay here and this is where we're going to be. And I'm like, oh, well, that's not what I was expecting. But, he's using that, staying in the, sometimes as unexciting as it seems at the time, he calls us to the place where we are. And so, yeah, so it's cool to
I
see.
remember that season. I remember when you were wrestling over just the love that you had for Haiti and your willingness to go there if
Yeah.
that's what God was calling you to. And I guess as I hear you tell the story about feeling called, it's a lot of little things, right? I'm sure you had some aha moments in the midst of it, but really
Yeah.
it's waking up in the morning and going, okay, God, what do you have for me today? And just seeing his providence, even in just that one day, and then stacking that up and going, you know what? I'm exactly where God wants me. And so that's really
Yeah.
cool. So let's talk a little bit about some of those very practical things that you've been doing. As you think about doing life on mission and being a representative of Christ at your lab with your coworkers and other people you're interacting with, you've shared with me some of the little things that you've done, and I was very impressed by them. And so one of them was just something that you did with an Excel spreadsheet. And so tell me about that. Tell me,
Yeah.
like, where did that idea come from? How has that worked for you?
Well, I mean, I'm a detail-oriented person. That's what makes me good at my job. And so I had been like doing a online prayer thing, and they wanted you to, as part of it, they were wanting you to like pray for every nation in the world in a month. So of course they had it all set up for you. They had it all, a map, and then on the first of the month, pray for these countries, and so I was trying to do that, and I was just realizing for me that was like really big. I was like, God, this just feels really disconnected and too big. And so I thought, I had kind of been praying for some different coworkers, just like, I can see the heartache in their life. And so I'm like, I can't fix that, but I know God can. So how about, I'm just going to pray for them. But it just felt disjointed and it didn't feel consistent. And so God, was like, what if you made an Excel spreadsheet and you put a few names next to every day of the month, and then within a month you could have prayed through all of the staff at in the lab, And I was like, I can do that. Like 2 or 3 names a day when I, have my little sheet out and on my kitchen tables when I'm eating my breakfast before I go to work, like who are the 2 names for today? And it's nothing elaborate or like profound. It's usually just like, hey God, remember these two. And just inviting him into whatever I happen to know about their personal life, or whatever verse he's given me about, to pray through for a good season. It was just revival, just like, God, let people have questions and want to know who you are and be wondering about spiritual things or whatever. And so gradually it's just kind of been, month to month, just update the list with new employees when they come in, and I might not even really know them or be working really directly with them, but just being able to also honestly tell my coworkers that I'm praying for them, if something's comes up or whatever. If I have that opportunity, like, I can say that because I have been, and so it felt small and simple, and like I didn't have to like do anything big, and nobody knew I was doing it, kind of thing. It wasn't like I, had to perform. It was just, hey, I can do this. And it felt good to know there's like consistency and faithfulness in it. And so it's been crazy to see how God's just, I don't know, that felt small.
Yeah.
But what he's done with it. So.
Yeah, it sounds like, I love it because it feels so just down to earth. And I love that you mentioned that not every prayer that you offer up is like this elaborate, like, hey, Lord, do all these things in this person's life. Sometimes it's just, hey, Lord, please remember or bless these people. Like, I don't even really know what's going on with them, perhaps, but just a willingness to kind of offer them and to say their name. And like you mentioned, like to be able to say with them with honesty and integrity, I do pray for you, I think that's a big deal. And I've been, trying to do that more consistently, even with people from our church, just going through a directory, praying over specific names. And when I do that, and I'm not consistent with it, but when I do that more habitually, it makes me a much better leader. It makes me more engaged and thoughtful and just aware in general. Okay, so you do a Excel spreadsheet, but you also do other little things. You told me a story last week about grocery shopping and just having a moment in prayer with God. And tell us about that. What happened, and how did that play out?
Well, and I think it kind of goes with like what you were just saying. It makes you more thoughtful and like more aware of people around you. And so I think through this process of praying for my coworkers, my heart has been turned more towards them. Not that I didn't like them before or I had a big problem with them or anything like that, but I think just my heart is softened to want good things for them and to be willing to give up something, or to be willing to like, hey, I could do this, I could bless them in this way, and so it's like shifted my thoughts toward that. And so I was shopping the other day, getting groceries, and I saw this huge tub, like, of those soft peppermints individually wrapped. And I love those things. Hard mints, no thanks, but the soft ones I love. And I'm like, I live by myself. I would eat that whole thing myself. That's not good. I'm like, wait, I can take it to work. I can bless my coworkers, like, it's one of my favorite things. Let me share with you. And so it felt so silly. And yet at the same time, it was just like, it's a small way to just say, like, I'm thinking about you guys without actually saying I'm thinking about you guys. And just, in the middle of all of this crazy life we're living right now, to just spread some love, to kind of, just remind, bring a smile, whatever, just so that people know it's not all doom and gloom, I guess.
And you actually did say something though, right? Like,
yeah, well,
wrote a little note on there.
Yeah. I put a little sticky note on it that said, these won't cure COVID, but hopefully they'll bring a smile to your face. And just, wanting to bring like a smile, like something to break up the day. Because I think it feels like it's hard to get to that place sometimes these days. And so a couple people, and I was kind of, trying to do it a little bit on the down low. I didn't want to make a big deal about it. It's not like I went around and told everyone like, hey, there's mints in the break room, or anything like that. But I wasn't expecting that people would respond with like an outpouring of thank yous, I mean, they're mints, for crying out loud. But a couple people said something, and I think that just encouraged me that like the heart reason that I did it was felt, because I think really it came down to not how much money I spent on the mints, or the mints for that matter, but like how God's changed my heart and my thoughts toward my coworkers. That's the way in which I gave, not like I have to give these mints because God says we're supposed to take care of people, I mean, that's gross. So the heart reason that I was doing it, it felt like when people said like, oh, thanks for the mints, Ruth, that it was received, it was heard,
Yeah, that's really encouraging. Now, okay, so people are listening to this interview and they're thinking, oh, good grief, this chick is doing an Excel spreadsheet and praying for workers and buying them gifts. But we know that this is not an easy thing for you, that this has been a struggle. You've talked to me about just the chaos of work lately and the stress of work, and just even the feelings that you've had to process. And so tell me a little bit about that. Talk to our listeners about the struggle of the moment and what you've done. You mentioned you do a little note thing in the break room. What's that about? What's going on there?
So the reality is, I mean, I feel like if I was to tell people I've got it all together or look that way, that's a huge fat lie. I mean, I feel like there's been plenty of times where I'm a mess and my thoughts are nutty, and anxiety and fear take over, like whether it's I'm in the middle of Walmart and I'm praising God that I have to wear a mask so I can be praying and talking to myself, because suddenly just this feeling of anxieties come over me and I'm like, how do I get my groceries and get out of here, or whatever. And at work, the same thing. Like there's some days where the thought of like, this could all just fall apart. It's all just going to blow up. It's all just going to, like, this is going to be awful. Or knowing the situations of some of our patients, I might not see the patients or know them personally, but seeing their lab results and figuring out what's going on with them, you can just become like, this is crazy and it's scary, or I can't do this, and getting short with, as I'm praying for my coworkers, but also because they have to deal with me, because sometimes under stress, I just get snappy and short with people, and it gets ugly. and people get hurt because I'm not cautious with my words, and that at the same time it's like, how am I, how do we do all this? It just feels like a mess, and sometimes I feel like a failure, because it's like, God, I have you, I have Jesus, I have the Spirit in me. How come I have coworkers who seem just like, just a busy day at work, and I'm like, So, feeling like failure and a mess, and just having to come home and decompress, and just like some days I've had to just like have a good cry, just be like, that was too much, God, it was too much. And so I think I've heard God kind of telling me a few times that right now work is the fire where he's refining me. And so some days I don't want to go into that. I don't want to do it. But the reality is, if I know that that's where I'm going, then don't I want to go? Don't I want him to go with me? Like, don't I want to be connected with him if that's where we're headed? And so, so, there's, sorry, excuse me. There's some things that he's shown me, some truths that he's given me. And then I literally wrote them down on a piece of paper and put them in my pocket. So every time it crinkled when I was moving around at work, or every time I got to a break, I could pull it out and read through it and remind myself, this is what we're doing today. This is what God says is true. This is what we're about, no matter what chaos or relational, emotional things are falling apart, or whatever, if it seems scary and overwhelming, this is where we're at. And so I need the physical visual reminder. And so whether it's a 3x5 card that has scripture on it, or like just a scratch piece of paper that says, this is where we're at. This is how we're doing things. That's one thing that's,
I'm sure as people are listening,
steady the course.
I'm sure as people are listening, they're probably encouraged to hear you wrestle with it, right? Because sometimes it can feel like there are these super Christians who have it all figured out, and they just march into work with this confidence, and they're, sharing their faith, and they're doing all these different things. But the truth is, in my experience, it's always pretty nitty gritty. It's always pretty like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, but God is giving me what I need in that moment. And so it's, at least for me, it's encouraging to hear that you wrestle with it. And, you've mentioned before too, that this idea of like being a representative of Christ at work and sharing your faith, it's not an easy thing for you to do. That you've had some ideas about it before that just felt like you had to have all the answers and know exactly what to say and all of that, but you've kind of come to view it a little bit differently. So tell us about that transition and kind of what you were referring to there.
Yeah. I think because I come from the place of, you need to do things right. And, I don't know, this idea of being a good Christian person, which God's transforming that. And so that good Christian person would be the one, like you were just describing, would just like march into work and, save the world. But as much as I wanted to be the good Christian, it was like, I don't, this is weird and uncomfortable. And I think part of it was, it felt really risky because it felt like I had to have this grand statement or something. And I think two things have happened. One, God's shown me that it is the small faithfulness, kind of that we've been talking about. And he's shown me more of who he is. And so I realize, and my relationship with him has changed so that I realize I'm not inviting people to rules and being orderly and the good person. I'm inviting people to a relationship. And so that doesn't happen through a big, let me give you this lecture or whatever. That happens through me being in relationship with people. And so, so it's been interesting just to look back even in the last couple of weeks and realize like, whoa, God has changed my thoughts. And so, because this wouldn't be a place that I would have been. And I still don't feel like I've got it all together and I've figured it all out. And, here's the 3 simple steps. I think I've just figured out that God just wants me to be real in relationship with him. And then that gives me joy and like the understanding of the treasure that we have and excitement to be in relationship with other people and share that. So that doesn't feel risky. Like, it doesn't feel scary to be like, guys, look, I know this thing. I mean, I know it, not just like I know it, and I think that's a big piece of it.
Yeah. There's a theme, as we talk today, there's a theme just about that dependence upon God. him providing for you in the midst of it and not feeling like you have to have it all figured out, and I hope that anyone who's listening hears that come through, that they're hearing, oh yeah, what it really means to be doing life on mission is it's a messy process, that
Yeah.
God finding us in it, and he uses us, that he allows for us to be a part of his redemptive work in the world. And that's a wild reality. As we wrap up today, I just want to ask you one more question, and that's just about how does your experience with church help with all of this? I mean, how does the kind of, normal interaction with your church community and your weekly rhythms, how does that kind of assist you in this?
Yeah. Well, I think, first of all, it just feels like, the Machesney Park campus where, like you dismiss us each week saying you're not dismissed, you're sent, go and be the church. And so part of me is like, this is our language. This is our, focus or our mission or, our overarching theme, maybe, I don't know. So I think this feeling of like, this is what the team is doing, like, let's work as a team. Let's do this, do this thing together. And so wanting to be, on that page and just thinking like, what does it look like? Like, what would happen if, the local church, like everybody in the local church, I mean, it's not pretty. That's what we've said. We're, like working in and out of the mess here. But what if that's what we were up to? And so kind of like, again, God turning my heart of like, getting excited about something that normally I'd be like, oh, okay, I don't know, how does this work? So I think just being together as a body of believers on Sunday and saying like, this is what we're all, messily working through together. We're all aiming in this direction. And then just there's a group of ladies that meet on Monday nights. We're currently doing it via Zoom, but just being in the Word and in community, and that accountability of just not like, are you doing what you're supposed to be doing, but the give and take, the back and forth of what is God's truth and how is it changing you, and that discussion in that place of that space of this is where we're at and where we're supposed to be, and what's God doing in us and through us. And so having those day-to-day weekly conversations with those gals,
Yeah.
makes you stop and think, I guess, where's
Yeah. The way you asked it too, I mean, it's just so profound to think about what if we actually did it,
Yeah.
Imagine,
Yeah.
like, okay, if the whole church were living like this, we maybe could actually change the world, and that's exciting. When I think about COVID-19 and some of the outcomes,
Yeah. Or at least our little part of it.
yeah, maybe the silver lining is just yeah, we're actually going to do this more frequently, that we're actually going to consider it as that we're called to. So I really appreciate you taking the time today to chat with me. And
I think one thing I just want to jump in and say, if I can, because one of the reasons I'm doing this is because I'm hoping other people will too, because I need to hear what are you guys doing? Like, like, what is the church doing? Corey says, go and be the church. And all right, let's do it. But especially in this time where it's hard to bump into each other at church, like, I'm sure God's working in other people's hearts and lives. And I'm sure that God is up to stuff at their workplace or in their homes or, wherever, but I need to know, because it encourages me and it helps me keep going. Like, guys, we're doing this. Like, God's up to stuff. And so I think one of the reasons I did it is because I'm like, okay, Corey, I got to hear from some other folks too, because I need the encouragement. So, yeah. Come on,
conversation with a lot of different people, and it's a blessing, because you're right. Like, we deserve to know what our church is up to, and it's fun to hear the stories of God at these different hearts and lives. And so Again, Ruth, thanks for jumping in and having this conversation. And I'm looking forward to more conversations
Yeah,
like
for sure.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. Take care.